Good morning, everyone. Just give everyone a moment to get settled. Make sure you got your headsets on or you got your volume adjusted accordingly, with a few still joining. Hopefully you've got a nice strong coffee, nice warm tea. It's freezing here in Sydney where I am. I'm not sure where you're all based. A bit of a chilly day here. Still got a few more joining. We'll just wait an extra 30 seconds or so. So on behalf of Ingram Micro, it's my pleasure to welcome you all along to our webinar this morning. It's an important topic and no doubt to grab your attention when you saw the invitation. The future of modern data protection with Veeam and Microsoft Azure. Barely a week goes by, we don't sort of hear of some sort of a hack or ransomware case. So it's very much relevant on your minds as service providers, but it's also on the minds of your customers. So we really hope that there's value in the content that you'll be hearing and listening into today. So just a brief introduction for myself. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Jesse Ryan. I work at Ingram Micro and look after the Veeam VCSP business. So that's the Veeam Cloud Service Provider business. So work very closely with the Azure team and obviously with the internal Veeam team as well. Prior to taking on this role, I worked for one of the Platinum VCSP partners. So very much either been in your shoes or perhaps worked closely along with someone in your shoes. No doubt there's a lot of engineers and architects on the call or pre-sales. Recognise the challenge that there is to roll out this solution, but also see the opportunity that there is in the market at the moment. So there's no doubt that data plays a real important role for businesses in 2023. Now, smart businesses, they recognise that managing their data, it's really important to success, isn't it? But smart businesses also realise that managing backup data is not only important to success, it's very much vital if you are to survive in this modern age that we're living in. And that is why in every well thought out continuity plan, there is a backup and disaster recovery plan that fits in nicely with that. Now here at Ingram Micro, we're very proud to partner with leading industry technology platforms. And today in our webinar, we're going to initially be hearing from Roshan Yalaburgi, who's the solutions architect at Ingram Cloud. And he's going to help you to see how Azure can help you to build a reliable backup offering. After this, he will nicely introduce Sean Llanto, who's our solutions architect here at Ingram. He looks after Veeam from a technical perspective here at Ingram Micro, and he's going to give some really important insights into the Veeam data platform. And one part that I'm really looking forward to, and no pressure, Sean, what can possibly go wrong, is a live demo. So that's going to be very educational for us all as well. So again, on behalf of Ingram Micro, thank you for joining our webinar. And we'll now hand over to Roshan Yalaburgi to take us through our opening section.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Thank you for that introduction. Hello, everyone. Very good morning, good afternoon from different locations that you're joining in. My name is Roshan, and I work with Ingram as a solution architect. And today I'll be talking about one of the most important topics for any company that works with customers' data, right? Which is data protection. Data protection is probably the very first strategy that people work towards when they think of cybersecurity or even security in general, right? Because a lot of times data can get corrupted, can get misused, can get deleted, and having a data protection for your vital information is absolute necessity. So with that, let's get started. A quick introduction again. I've been working with Ingram for a little over 6 years. I'm a Microsoft guy throughout my career, I started with Microsoft as the company, and then moved to MSPs, worked with multiple MSPs in different regions, and now I'm working with Ingram. So I've pretty much worked throughout the channel market across my 10, 12 years of career. Apart from Azure, I also have worked on Office 365, now known as M365. I have knowledge on our competitors like AWS, and I work very closely with Jesse and his team on backup and disaster recovery solutions as well. So for people who are new to Azure, I have a couple of slides that basically give you a context in terms of what is Azure, why Azure, and how can these two amazing technologies work together. So to start off with, Microsoft Azure in very simple terms is basically uh, data centers connected together and providing scalable, flexible services to customers over the internet, right? Now, these data centers are spread across the globe. There are more than 60 plus data centers. Microsoft has the highest number of data center regions when you compare with other cloud service providers. In Australia, they have 4 regions: Australia East, which is kind of Sydney-based; Australia Southeast, which is more like a Melbourne-based; and Central and Central 2, which is more on the Canberra side of it. Our neighbor New Zealand is also getting their own data centers in the coming months. So that will be our closest data center outside Australia once it goes live. As of today, the closest is Southeast Asia, which is Singapore. Okay, so all these data centers are connected. Every data center has hundreds and hundreds of services that Azure provides, and we'll be looking at one of the most important service among them, known as Azure. Now, before I dive deep into Azure service or backup service, I want to quickly highlight this specific feature of the Azure data center. It's called as availability zone. What that means is when Microsoft says they have 60 plus data center regions, a region doesn't necessarily mean one data center. Typically, a region, at least the Microsoft region, usually has 3 or sometimes even more than 3 data centers, right? Now, for Australian customers, both Australia East and Southeast have more than 3 data centers, 3 or more data centers, uh, which means that the storage and the backup piece gets about 99.99% SLA, right? So if you have customers who really require high SLA for their services, then both the regions, East and Southeast, can provide you that. Okay. Now going to the services, like I said, one slide is just not enough to fit all the services that Azure provides, right? Right from compute to data insight, from AI to migration, from databases to IoT. The scale of services that Microsoft Azure provides, there is a service for pretty much every requirement that the customer has. And since it's a technology, it's a platform that Microsoft has brought in, it very tightly integrates with your existing Microsoft stack. Whether you're using Windows 10 for your PCs, whether you're using Windows servers or Hyper-V for your virtualization, integrating into that environment or migrating that environment or setting up a hybrid uh, makes a very seamless experience for your end users. And more about that we'll look into today's session. So out of all these Azure services, one of the topics that we'll be covering deep dive today is the Azure backup. Now, I do come across partners from time to time who don't really know that Azure actually offers a backup service. Now, this backup service, when it was brought into picture, it was initially designed just to back up Azure only, right? Things running on Azure. But over the last couple of years, Microsoft has made a lot of investment and has made this service not just for Azure only, but it's now become a hybrid uh, service. It gives you a single portal, a single pane of glass to manage backup, restore, or data protection across hybrid platforms. It still continues to support Azure workloads, and every day you will see more and more services being added into Azure Backup so that you can use one tool to go ahead and take the backup of most of your applications and data. It takes an application consistent backup for most of the Microsoft applications. Now, uh, these applications, for example, are SQL Server, SharePoint Server, and Exchange. I hope not a lot of you are using Exchange on-prem or Exchange in a virtual machine or a server. I hope most of you have transitioned to Microsoft 365 and using Exchange Online. But nonetheless, if you still have customers due to legacy issues or application compatibility issues are using Exchange, you can definitely use Azure Backup to take an application consistent backup. It also provides several storage options. Storage within Azure has a 11.9 reliability count, which means it is super secure. It is encrypted by design. Data in rest is encrypted. Data in transit is encrypted. Data is also compressed. So it gives you all these beautiful functionalities which a lot of vendors also provide. So just to summarize, the workloads that it can back up are not just Azure only workloads. It can definitely back up on-premise workloads. In terms of storage, it is not just giving you an option to have the backup of your data stored in the same region. It can also store in a different region. There are options where you can also get read-only access to the data stored in the other region. A lot of partners which I work with typically have this compliance rule where the data should be stored at least 300 kilometers away. So customers who have their primary data running in east have their backup stored in southeast, right? And as we go on in the session, you'll see it's not just backup. There are advanced options of taking snapshots, and these snapshots can be of storage of virtual machines and etc. At the very top, at the management layer, you can define policies, permissions, you can define schedules. There is support for SDK and CLI as well, so you can have it scripted out. And all this works from a single portal. So that makes the job of an IT engineer or IT manager much more easier. So we look at three scenarios today: backup of your on-prem, backup of Azure workloads, and backup of Microsoft 365, right? If there are any other scenarios that you would like us to cover, or if you're interested to know more, please feel free to use the chat and we'll look at your questions towards the end of the session and hopefully answer all of them. So first topic is backup of your on-premise into Azure. Now, this is one of the best solutions that you can currently provide to your customer. The reason I say that is typically when a customer plans for backup, he looks at it as, okay, I'll need to have storage, enough storage for the next 5, 7, 10 years. So he has to buy the storage at ahead of time so that he's able to store his full and incremental backups and have the retention also configured so that he can have the data available for, let's say, 3, 5, 7 years. When you bring the same logic to cloud, you don't actually need to buy storage at lump sum, because in Azure, you can pay only for the storage that you use. So you can backup and restore not just virtual machines or servers, you can backup and restore files, files and folders, which is very critical for your applications, right? A lot of times, yes, definitely do backup. When you do that, the amount of time it takes to restore virtual restore it, restore a VM and then restore the application data is a lot. So the RTO becomes quite high. When you just, let's say, folders or files or disk, even for that matter, the amount of recovery time, your typical Windows and SQL server, right? Sorry, Windows and Linux server. So whether you're running it on a physical server, whether you're running it on virtualized technologies, all of those are supported. And last but not the least, Azure also supports system state or bare metal recovery if required as well. So as you can see, it pretty much covers, I think, most of the scenarios that an SMB customer would require, right? Right from file folder backup to VM backup or server backup, and then at the end, a full system state backup as well. So that was about backing up on-prem into Azure. So in the previous scenario, you back up. Now there are different ways of backing up. You can either deploy an agent, or you can also install something called as Microsoft Azure Backup Server. Right, it's a software that Azure Backups provides. You can install it on-prem. That software basically scans your environment, backs it up, and pushes it up to Azure. Now, do remember, when you do backup and you're pushing data into Azure, Azure doesn't charge you for an upload bandwidth cost. There's no bandwidth cost for upload. There's only bandwidth cost for download. Now, when you're using the Azure backup services, like whether it is an agent or an Azure backup server, and if you use that service to perform a restore, there is no bandwidth cost associated with that as well. So any Azure backup service which you use, there's no egress or ingress cost associated with it. Okay, now talking about the workloads that are in Azure. So you have a customer who's using uh, servers and storage and file server and all of these things on Azure, and they definitely need a backup for it. Just because things are running in Azure doesn't mean things will not go wrong, right? It is, end of the day, it is humans who interact with these applications and data, and there's always a possibility of unintended mistake that might happen by a user. So in that scenario, Azure provides you backup of, again, virtual machines. You can still take a backup of your files and folders as well. That is still available. You can take backup of Azure File Share. Azure File Share is now becoming more and more popular because of both SMB accessible and now the latest NFS accessible NFS protocol as well. So with those, people are now using Azure File Service or Azure File Storage as file server as a service kind of a thing. So if you have on-prem customer who has a file server who's looking to move to Azure, or who's looking to move to cloud but still access it using a Windows Explorer format, then Azure File is a very, very good solution for that. So you can take backup of all these things. You can take snapshots, which help you do a much faster recovery. And snapshots, they do not affect your workloads, right? Uh, if you have advanced workloads like SQL and SAP HANA, there are specialized agents built for it, which can take a backup of those applications as well. Now, when you have a backup of any of these workloads which are running in Azure, typically it's an extension, a backup extension that gets installed on the virtual machine or on the storage account. That goes ahead and takes the backup of those and puts it into a recovery vault. Recovery vault is basically, think of it as a logical container which holds all your backup data. A quick slide about Azure backup for file share. Like I said, there are two ways that people tend to use these file share. One is they want to decommission their on-prem file server, move everything into a cloud-based file server. So that's option one. Option two is a lot of customers also require an SMB accessible storage for their applications, right? To dump data or to whatever documents you upload into your application, you typically store it into this SMB accessible storage. So that's also another scenario which I've seen Azure files being used. So no matter what scenario, you can take a backup of Azure files, you can take snapshots of it, you can create retention policies and have it stored on Azure storage itself. The last scenario is backup for Office 365 and M365. Now, unfortunately, Azure Backup does not have an extension or a plugin or capability to back up your M365, right? So in this scenario, it's definitely recommended you look at a third-party tool like Veeam, which does a very wonderful job there. Veeam, of course, doesn't do just M365, it does a whole heap of other backup and recovery protection, which Sean will be talking in the upcoming slides. Now, before I pass on the mic to Sean, I just want to quickly touch on how is the Azure backup priced. Now that we know the features and functionalities, its capabilities, it's also important to know how it is priced, because in the cloud world, everything is consumption based, right? So in the Azure world, assuming you're taking a backup of a VM, I'm taking an example of a VM here, but the instance size and the storage size should give you a clear idea. So if you're taking a backup of a VM which is 50 GB or less, it's $5 for the agent or for the extension. If it's 50 to 500, the agent or the extension cost becomes $10. And if it's over 500 GB, then it's $10 for every 500 GB over the 500 GB of it, right? So the cost of the agent increases as the amount of data that you're backing up increases. Right? That is one thing to keep in mind. In terms of storage, we have, like I said, different options. We have local redundant, which is local redundant basically means that the data is stored within the same region. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the same data center. It can store in another data center, but it's within the same region. Geo-redundant is across region, right? Sorry, correction there. Local redundant storage means it is within the same data center. Now, it may not be on the same server, right? There's another storage called zone redundant, which means it'll make sure that it is not within the same data center. It stores in another data center altogether. Again, we looked at the pricing. We look at a scenario here. Let's say you're backing up 5 servers each with 40 GB. The total fixed cost per month is $25. That's the agent cost, and the storage cost is about $8. The second scenario is, let's say you're backing up 10 servers, 100 GB in size. Then there's the cost of the agent and the storage, and 50 servers. You get the point, right? So the point to remember is the agent cost increases as the amount of data for that particular instance increases. Now, before I pass on the mic to Sean, a couple of very important links. I would definitely encourage you to look at the FAQs for backup of Azure components, whether it is on-prem, backing up into Azure, or Azure backing up of Azure components itself. The FAQ has most of the questions which you or your customers would have in your mind, and they have answers to all of them. So I definitely encourage you to have a look at it. Whenever I get a question which I'm not too familiar with or I'm not too sure about, I always look at the FAQs, and most of the time I get the answer from there. With that, I'll pass on the mic to Sean, who will run you through the Veeam backup story, and then I'll come back at the end and do a quick comparison of both the services, and then take you through some of the promotion activities that we are running. Sean, over to you.
Thank you so much, Roshan. That is very informative. Informative of what you have shared with regard to Azure. I'm just trying to fix it and share my screen accordingly. Just give me some time.
Yeah, we can see a screen.
I'm just changing the screen settings. Um, which screen are you? So you're seeing my
The Veeam data platform. I can see the full screen mode of the Veeam data platform.
okay. Just let me just do that again. I stopped sharing it earlier. Just to confirm, you're seeing the not the PPT slide, but and as I move, you're seeing the whole
Correct.
screen of the PowerPoint, right? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, Roshan. So yeah, so before we proceed with talking about Veeam backup for Azure, I wanted to talk about Veeam data platform first. Just like to minimize some of the items here. Apologies for that. Okay. When we talk about Veeam, what is Veeam in particular? Uh, the core product originally is Veeam backup for replication, and ever since it has been the industry-leading backup, recovery, and data security solution for all of your workloads, both on-premise and in the cloud. Veeam provides you with a comprehensive backup across cloud, virtual, physical, and NAS environments. You are able to perform automated backup and replica testing to ensure that data is recoverable, even if and when a disaster strikes. You're actually able to achieve your service level agreements with the reliable restores from the pioneer of instant recovery. And at the same time, you're able to create malware free backups thanks to automatic scans and trusted malware detection. You're able to use a secure restore to be able to ensure that the data that you are restoring is free from malware. One of the key features that Veeam has is it's it's hardware agnostic. Thus, you actually have the flexibility to move your data, let's say from one platform to another, to restore your data across multiple cloud platform or various on-premise solutions. And you're able to reduce the risk with comprehensive data security, such as end-to-end immutability of your backups, and automated verification, which exposes undetected malware before recovery. And of course, you're able to leverage on AWS and Azure native security functionalities to keep those ransomware out. I wanted to show some of the accolades that Veeam had, especially with the Net Promoter Score, the number of customers protected by Veeam worldwide. And I won't go through it in detail, but this image or this picture sums up that Veeam is definitely a global leader in being able to provide excellent data protection. Overall, when we talk about Veeam data platform, there are three main platforms that we should think of. It's Veeam backup and replication, Veeam One, and Veeam disaster recovery uh, for orchestrator. So, and when you sum this up, what are the data that you can actually protect? So, whether we're talking about cloud hyperscalers such as AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and uh, even if you have, let's say, Kubernetes involved, we have Veeam backup for that as well. Whether you're on virtual or physical workloads, you have apps or, let's say, software as a service options such as M365, like Roshan mentioned earlier, and we have Veeam backup for your Salesforce. You actually have a very large, vast platform that uh, you can leverage on to be able to serve whatever backup you would need, and of course, be able to replicate and recover this uh, securely and in a streamlined fashion. As a foundational component of Veeam data platform, Veeam backup and replication delivers secure, powerful, and reliable data protection. You're actually able to eliminate downtime with instant recovery, and hopefully I'll be able to show that to you later. And stay safe from cyber threats with native immutability and tested backups. With instant recovery, you're able to achieve any recovery time objective or recovery point objective. You're able to secure your workloads with backups you can trust and with an end-to-end immutability, as well as whether you're using a multi-cloud environment or hybrid cloud approach, you actually have that capability built in. With Veeam 1, you're able to mitigate potential issues with 340 plus preset alarms before the threat comes to your environment as well, because of it has proactive alerting for you. You have intelligent diagnostics, which minimizes the downtime with proactive issue resolutions, and you're able to remediate those issues by allowing you to eliminate manual responses to alarms by setting automated self-healing and policy-based fixes. Veeam Recovery Orchestrator reduces compliance risks and saves valuable time by automating recovery processes as well. You have automated testing, which removes uncertainty. You don't want a backup that you're not certain whether you're able to restore it. So that's the good thing about Veeam is you're able to perform automated testing on the backups to ensure that you can meet your enterprise recovery goals. You're able to perform zero impact scheduled or on-demand disaster recovery tests to ensure that required recovery time objectives and RPO can be met. And you're able to confirm and verify that the critical enterprise applications are functioning as expected. You also have that dynamic documentation, which saves time, where you're automatically able to generate and maintain disaster recovery documentation to prove readiness and compliance. And of course, I've mentioned earlier one-click recovery. So you get back to business, securely recover single applications or entire site in a single click from any location. Overall, these three pillars, this three platforms cover up the three pillars that Veeam uh, has to make sure that your business is running. Data security, ensuring that your data is safe. Data recovery, at the end of the day, it's really the recovery that matters. Is the data there when you need it, or does the data work expectedly? And of course, data freedom. So I keep on mentioning this data freedom because that's what Veeam provides. You're actually able to answer the question, what is your exit strategy? Uh, what freedom do you have when you actually want to restore your data? Are you able to restore your data wherever you need to and not having your data held hostage, right? So overall, Veeam data platform provides you these three key pillars that I feel that would be a very good options to have when selecting your Veeam backup, your backup solution. Now I've given you Veeam the data platform. I'll overview. Let's talk about Veeam backup for Azure. All right. It's always important to pause and, and and talk about when you're in the cloud, the shared responsibility the responsibility model. So the idea that every cloud provider has an agreement with every organization to say that these are the things that we are responsible for, and these are the things that you're responsible for. So when you are in the cloud, the protection of data relies on you as the customer. Even Azure will recommend a third-party backup solution sometimes to make sure that you have a resilient architecture in addition to high availability and elasticity in networking that Azure provides as a service. Our Azure solutions have a host of incredible capabilities, whether that be tiering out of object storage to reduce cost, or having that policy-based approach to back up and recover so you are not managing individual agents. But if you think about why these capabilities are important, so I think about security, recovery time objective, and zero compromise. Veeam provides isolated backups. Veeam allows you to back up to different Azure accounts, back up to different Azure zones, so that you can have those resiliency built in. You're able to perform you're able to recover anywhere. You're able to perform file level recovery and simplified recovery as well. with Veeam. And you're able to create policy-based, cost-optimized, and hybrid-ready solutions. So what you will notice with the demo later is whenever we're trying to create a policy for VMs, you're actually able to see the cost that or that what you might incur with regard to, let's say, how much backup you have, how much you are backing up, whether you're, let's say, selecting a number of, let's say, snapshots or a number of backup points. So it actually calculates to you how much the cost would be. Before the demo, I wanted to share and highlight some of the uh, key things that you can that is or some of the supported services that Veeam can back up. Of course, the first one is Azure VMs. Of course, this is for Veeam backup for Azure. So you have Azure VMs, you have managed disks, Azure SQL, Azure Files, and Azure Blobs. You're actually able to back this up. I think this is what everyone is waiting for. So we actually have a demo on Veeam, uh, Veeam backup for Azure, and I just wanted to take a quick pause here and make sure that you guys are able to see my screen, and not just the PPT. Uh, Jesse, Roshan, can you just confirm if you guys are seeing now the
I can
the
confirm. I can confirm, Sean. Yeah,
my VMware workstation with Veeam? Thank you.
correct.
Okay, thank you so much. So when we talk about Veeam backup for Azure, there are two ways how you can actually install and set it up. So we'll try to tackle both ways. So the first one would be if you have Veeam backup and replication already as the core product, and you're going to install Veeam backup for Azure plugin. So the first thing that you would need if you're using Veeam backup and replication already is you should download this Microsoft Azure plugin for Veeam backup and replication. So once you've done that, of course, you just install the plugin accordingly, and you'll be able to add the Azure servers within your Veeam backup and replication. So this is the fun part. So how do we actually do that? So assuming you've already installed the plugin, you've downloaded the plugin, you've installed the plugin. The next step that you would be doing. So mine, I have connected it already, but I'm going to show you the steps that you should consider when doing so. So the good thing about Veeam is it's very much wizard driven, and I think for those who have been using Veeam ever since, you'll notice that practically it's somehow a next approach. For those that are new to Veeam, um, you yeah, so it's very intuitive. It's very let's say it, uh, it provides you a good user experience when you're actually using the platform. So now that we have added a plugin and we're planning to add the Azure appliance, so you just need to click on Veeam backup for Azure, and this is the same with other hyperscalers such as Veeam backup for AWS. So it actually asks you the question of the deployment mode, whether you're going to connect to an existing appliance. This means that if you already have an existing backup for Azure that was generated previously, or if you wanted to deploy a new appliance. So for this, let's assume that it's going to be a fresh install, and you're going to select the Azure Compute account. So if you have not had an Azure Compute account, you can just click on Add. You can click Azure. I'm just putting out names here. Azure Compute account. Uh, just click on Next because it's global. And when you talk about create new account, this actually means that it's going to create an appliance, an app registration for you with all of the necessary rights, accesses. However, if you already did this manually, where you actually created your compute account separately in Azure, or your app registration in Azure, you provided the necessary roles. You can select the you can select use existing account. You can put in the tenant ID in your Active Directory. your application ID that is available in your app registration, as well as the app secret. After that, you should be able to connect to this one. So I'll cancel this, and so I already have that available, and then it should be able to connect. One key consideration for those that are new to Azure and is there would be instances that it will say that could not find any subscription. And one of the key reason is you don't have you don't have sufficient rights to be able to see that. So you need to provide the rights to your app registration in order to be able to see that. So here you're actually selecting, say, which data center you would want the appliance to be set up, what resource group you'd like to choose. If you didn't create any resource group previously, you can just use create new, and it will check the VM quota on your Azure subscription. So this is where you just put in the VM name, or the name of the virtual machine that will show in your Azure account. Maybe let's say Azure backup VM, something like that. It's like what I said. It's next. Of course, the description you just need to put in so that you'll be able to see, or be able to identify it in the future what things you put in. Select the virtual network, select the subnet. So for this scenario, I'll just put create new, and the IP assignment, the credentials for that OS, so meaning the administrator username and password that will be created for that VM, and use the following key pair. When I started using this, I had some issue with the key pair not being able to be created. One thing to note is you need to have the role of key crypto officer for that app registration in order for it to be able to generate a key pair for you. And then, so I'm just showing this to you. I'm not going to make the or to finish setting this up. Okay, sorry. So, but basically, uh, if you're creating, sorry, I clicked it, but yeah, basically, yeah, if you're clicking something, it will create the Azure appliance for you. The next thing that I wanted to show would be within the Azure marketplace as well. You're actually able to create your Azure instance, or your Veeam backup and replication instance from here accordingly. So let's say here you just click on, let's say if you wanted to try the community edition or the free edition, you use Veeam backup for Microsoft Azure for free. If you're using Veeam backup and replication already and you want to leverage on your VUL licenses, you're actually able to click on Veeam backup for Microsoft Azure. From here, you're able to choose which version. The latest version is version 5. So let's say we go with that. Uh, in terms of certain things, just click on create here. Practically whatever you have in the previous screen that we did in Veeam backup and replication, you're actually able to select the resource group. You're able to click on some availability options where you'd want certain, let's say, availability zones. The image, you just click on disks, for example, whether you'd want a locally redundant storage, or let's say a standard SSD. So typical things that you would be considering when you're generating an Azure workload, right? So uh, So you just select the necessary configurations that you would need. Enable auto shutdown, of course, is very important if for demo purposes, especially if you're using a free account from like me. So assuming you have that set up according to your requirements, you just need to, let's say, review and create. And yeah, so you need to make sure that some of the settings that you would need are set up. And once the certain settings have been configured accordingly, you can just create, and it will create a backup appliance for you. Now, in the interest of time, I'm actually going to show you here. So this is the web page, so that of the appliance. If it is already available, if it is already running, you're actually going to have this configuration page. And the configuration page will actually ask you to complete certain steps. So the first step, of course, is Microsoft Azure account, and this is already ticked. But when you come to this page, the next thing that you would need to do would be worker configurations. So workers are actually the helpers that allow you, that move your data from one location to another. One of the key considerations with workers is uh, if you're backing up a data or a VM or a workload, let's say in Australia Central, you need to provide a worker for that region. The same way with Australia East, the same way with Southeast, and other regions accordingly. Uh, if you are using Veeam backup and replication together with Veeam backup for Azure, uh, also take note of the service endpoints. If you're going to perform a backup, it's important that the service endpoints in Azure has been deployed in the resource group itself. Uh, so this service bus should be deployed in the regions as well, in order for you to be able to generate these backups. So going back, once you have done, let's say, or once you've created the network or workers, uh, these two tabs here, it will be pre-filled by Veeam Backup for Azure after you actually run it the first time. So it's generating a profile for you depending on, let's say, how many terabytes or gigabytes you're actually going to back up. And the good thing about these workers is if we are very much considering, let's say, the data or the cost, what Veeam does is it allocates a worker instance, and after you actually after you back up, it will deallocate that worker instance for you, which means that you're actually able to have a worry-free. You won't have much of a worry when it comes to cost. Now, uh, I wanted to show some of the policy creation. I won't be able to go through each of the policy creation, but I wanted to focus on virtual machines. So I've created two backup policies, actually one for, uh, uh, so let's open this one and I'll just show you how to create a VM policy as it is. So with edit of VM policy, let's say you just give the name to your policy. You select the source, which is the Azure account that you're actually going to back up, which regions you want to protect, which resource groups, which resources you want to protect as well. So if you have multiple VMs within, let's say, within the same region, you'll actually be able to see it here. In this region that I have selected, which is Australia Southeast, I have one VM. So uh, so that's why it's just showing one VM here. And when you click on next, you're asked whether you would want to leverage an application aware processing for consistency. And if you want to have, let's say, some prescripts and postscripts accordingly. So here, and again, I'd like to highlight, if you're using VBR, this enable backups is very important for you. If you're actually leveraging Veeam Backup for Azure, this enable backup would be one of the key considerations that you would need, because this allows you to have a portable data. So it allows you to move your data from, let's say, Microsoft Azure to an on-premise workload, or if you'd want to move to a different cloud, a hyperscaler, you're able to do so with this one. So I tick that accordingly. You're also able to have, let's say, certain scheduling options, whether you'd want to keep, let's say, snapshot for 7 days, keep backup for 7 days, and so on. And then it's going to ask you to choose a repository. So in order for you to be able to choose a repository, you need to deploy this first in your Azure environment. So you need to create a repository, and then afterwards it will be you're actually able to see it here. I was mentioning about costs earlier. So here, depending on the number of snapshots that you would be taking, you're actually able to see it on top as well. So if you increase the number of snapshots, if you create, let's say, create different retention policies, you'll be able to see overall cost that you would be spending. And if you have, let's say, a specific pricing with Azure, so that would be a different. So this will still show you this because these are the standard cost. But if you have a specific pricing for Azure that you actually have, let's say with the disti or so, then you might have a smaller cost accordingly for that. So and once you've done that, you just click on the policy, and you're actually able to do so. The same way with Azure SQL. So you select your sources. Um, I'm just doing it quickly with the interest of time. Uh, so with what you're protecting, you can protect either a database or SQL server, and practically the same goes with the next steps. And with Azure Files, so you're same way, just to do the necessary steps, select the region you want to protect, and the resource. So with resource, you're able to protect file share, a resource group, or a storage account. Practically, uh, once you've set this up, you're good to go. Um, I'm just waiting for this to finish. So um, if this doesn't finish quickly, I'll just talk you through about the backup in the snapshot. So when you actually have a backup that has been generated in Microsoft Azure, you're actually able to port the data or move the data from, let's say one cloud provider to another. You're able to perform file level recovery as well. You're able to perform instant VM restore or instant recovery with that one. So if you just need to get some data from that VM, or you need to run that VM, you're able to do so. So, mm, so I am currently stuck with this screen, but yeah, going back. So yeah, so with the policies, if you have the policy for this one, and then you have a backup policy set up, yeah, this is what will allow you to migrate. But key things to consider is this should be together with Veeam backup and replication. If you're just using Veeam backup for Azure, you won't be able uh, to have that portability. So it's important to leverage on Veeam backup for Azure on that one. So I wanted to talk about pricing very quickly as well. When we talk about uh, Veeam Backup for Azure, there is a free edition, and a free edition allows you to back up 10 instances, and it provides you best effort support. So you're actually able to get this from from Azure Marketplace, like what I've shown earlier. You also have this Bring Your Own License edition. It's 40 USD per instance per year, and yeah, so this is backup and recover in Azure only. So this is snapshots, and uh, it allows you to use the snapshots, and of course the Bring Your Own edition, the hybrid multi-cloud with VUL. So this is what I was talking about with unlimited data portability. or for your backup, where you're able to perform restores, whether on premise or on cloud, and so on. I just quickly cover Veeam Cloud Connect. I'll skip this part. I was talking um, about overall Veeam solution earlier. Just a quick one on offsite backup and disaster recovery as a powered solution. Backup as a service and disaster recovery as a service are business continuity solutions that include ways of storing and restoring backups in the cloud and are typically managed by a service provider. And this solution offered to the customers are fully managed, monitored, and secure method of protecting the critical data without needing to maintain an offsite repository. So for those end users in the call, you can let's say work with a Veeam Cloud Connect provider or your provider, so that you don't need to worry about maintaining an offsite data uh, repository. What this offers to you is you're actually able to have fast and flexible failover of specific VMs or even an entire site. You're able to have streamlined failback with zero data loss and minimal disruptions to users as well. uh, you're able to it actually provides you with recovery assurance in the sense that it's including support for replica and failover, as well as seamless integration with Veeam user interfaces, workflows, and data collection, including Veeam continuous data protection engine. And yeah, so basically for Veeam disaster recovery as a service, you're outsourcing the service to provide a Veeam powered by Cloud Connect. And you're able to execute failover and failback within an established RTO and RPO to minimize downtime should an unplanned event occur, as well as Cloud Connect offers you offsite backups to allow uh, data survivability or getting a copy of data offsite. So this means that your data is actually offsite and within the Cloud Connect provider. With the interest of time, I'll quickly pass the floor to Roshan. I'll be sharing the screen, but Roshan will be talking about Veeam backup for Azure differences. Uh, Roshan, I think Roshan, you're speaking on mute.
Sorry, guys. I'll just quickly share my screen here. Just bear with me for a second. Yeah, here it is. So what I'll do is I'll quickly take you through some of the differences between the both products. Now, you might have noticed one critical difference is one is the Veeam agent, the cost doesn't increase when the size of the backup size increases. That's one major difference. The second major difference is if for whatever reason your customer is using a 32-bit application or operating system for legacy compliance application reasons, Azure Backup doesn't support it. Veeam does. And the third big difference is Veeam has an offering for Office 365 M365 and Azure doesn't. Apart from these three, everything else is quite similar. Veeam also has this Veeam Cloud Connect or VCSP, which I think is a very nice offering when you especially combine it with Azure. You could actually use Azure as your own data center and provide backup as a service or DR as a service for your on-prem Veeam customers. And I actually have some of the partners doing it. It's a wonderful offering that you can take to market, customize it, have your own pricing for it, and make it available for your customers. So that more or less concludes our session. If you do have any questions, feel free to add it in the chat. And before I end the session, I quickly wanted to update all of you that we do have a partner briefing event coming up in 3 cities, Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne. These are the dates for it. The Sydney is happening on 23rd May, Brisbane on 30th May, and Melbourne on the 6th of June. If you're based in any of these cities, please attend, do come along and attend at this event. It'll be Microsoft, Ingram, and a whole bunch of people available at this event. Now, what are we talking at this event? We are talking about how partners can access funding for their projects via Ingram. And these fundings are available primarily for Microsoft Azure, but if you do have the overall scope of the project is using Veeam to do backups, or is Veeam back part of the project, you can still get this funding from Ingram Micro. Not just funding for migration, we also have funding for assessments. So if you do have customers who are wanting to move to cloud but are looking at options looking at a roadmap, or looking at having a detailed idea in terms of how the migration will take place, what tools, what will be the cost in Azure. We do have an assessment program for it. We do have a proof of concept funding, where, as you can see, it ranges between $5,000 to $35,000. You also get some free Azure credits, and we also offer migration services as well. So all of these things will be talked about in very detail in that partner event. So I would strongly encourage each and every one of you to kindly take your time out and attend. I'll quickly go back to the slide to showcase the date and time. So just to reiterate, 23rd is Sydney, 30th is Brisbane, and 6th of June is Melbourne. With that, I'm at the end of today's session. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for taking out time and attending our session today. Hope it was informative and helpful. With that, we'll go ahead and review the questions in the Q&A and close out the session. Sean, I think there is a question specific for Veeam in the chat, if you can take it up.
Thank you, Roshan. So the question is, can you add plugin if you have socket-based licenses, or do you need VUL licenses? So my understanding it is you would need Veeam Universal licensing for this. However, socket-based licensing, if I'm not mistaken, can be if you have existing socket-based licenses, we can talk to your, let's say, to your sales rep, and there might be an option for you to upgrade it into VUL option as well. Yeah, I hope I answered the question there. And yeah, please feel free to reach out to us if you have more questions on this one specifically.
Absolutely. So with that, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking out time and attending the session, and have a great day ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roshan. Thank you, Jesse. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.